Hello, welcome back to the series 7 Renovation Lessons Learned by a Financial Advisor, which is me, Luke Hanson, Director at My Financial Design. Well, lesson number 3, pick your players. By that I mean making sure you're selecting the right tradespeople or the right people involved in your renovation who are going to be on your renovating team. This is the part where it requires you to take multiple quotes and talk to multiple people over multiple weeks and can be a bit like you're going around the mulberry bush. For me, I had tenants living in the property at this point of my renovation journey, so it was a little bit difficult to, kind of have everyone come in and quote. You have to be very selective because you don't want to disrupt the tenants too much. But if you're living in your own principal place of residence, it can be a bit easier. You can have people come when you're home and you can have as many as you like. But it's really important to at least get multiple quotes, at least 2 quotes on each aspect of the renovation you're looking for, because there can be a vast difference in those costs. So, for example, I had to get some trees removed from the backyard. One quote was $2,000, one quote was $1,000. So obviously there can be a difference in quality for that price difference, but the lower quote worked for me. They were great people, they were insured and really professional. So just because there's a range of quote differential, don't necessarily mean, that the most expensive is the best quality or the lowest is the worst quality. Obviously you get what you pay for, but within that, take the time to get multiple quotes because it's so important, and your budget can run away from you if you don't get those multiple quotes and work out what's going to be the most appropriate for your situation. And when I say get multiple quotes, I say work with professionals, by the way. So by that I mean, for some jobs inside the house, perhaps a handyman can do those, and you'd like to think the handyman's cheaper, though not always, per hour that is on the dollar rate. But if it's going to be a handyman, well, think to yourself, what is it that's not so important to the overall structural components of the renovation? But what's going to be relevant, what's going to be appropriate for a handyman to do, and if you can get a lower cost for that, sure. But at the same time, one of the things that went wrong for me, or not went wrong so much, but I would have done differently perhaps, is that the handyman, while they were a little bit cheaper, they probably took a bit longer to do things and weren't as experienced in everything. So while you pay a cheaper hourly rate, if they spend more hours fluffing around trying to get it right, you may actually come out better if you hire a builder who might be a bit more expensive but can get it done faster and can get it done right the first time. So by that I mean make sure you choose the right people along the way who are actually going to be skilled at what they do, have experience, and are going to get the job done properly. I like to pick people on the team. I like to pick the players who I like to work with. I found that at the end of the day, you're working with a lot of people. It can be a bit of a high stress environment sometimes, particularly if things are going wrong or you've got a deadline to get everything done by and you've got 2 or 3 trades in and out each day and you've got a lot going on, and particularly if it's you can't commit full time to overseeing the renovation. You've got other work to do. You've got a job of yourself, presumably. You want to pick people who you actually get along with. I found that if you can take the stress out of things by having a bit of a laugh and enjoying each other's company and understanding and being on the same level, I think that's a really good way to go. So if you got the option of a couple of quotes and they were all within the ballpark, I'd pick the person who you actually get along with and you think is going to be good for the journey and understands what you're trying to do and isn't going to cause problems, and it isn't going to cause problems with other trades. That's the next point. When you're picking your players, you want to make sure that if you're the one oversighting the project and you haven't handed it off to a builder, if it's a builder and they're going to pick their own team, well, that's a little bit different. But if you're going to manage multiple trades, you've got to make sure that those individual trades work together and gel together towards the overall goal of the project. So have a think about who you get along with, but also ask a trade that you've decided to go with. Well, do you have any other recommendations? Who do you like to work with who might be able to give me a quote and go from there? So if you can pick people that are a good price, they get on well with you, they get on well with others, I think the renovation's off to a really great start. I like to know when things go wrong in the future, if something comes back and needs fixing again, who am I actually asking to fix that? So for example, I had to renovate, strip out and do a whole new bathroom as part of the renovation. For that component of the renovation, I decided to engage a builder, and then he put his team together. And I know that if something goes wrong with that bathroom, I go back to the builder. I don't need to be chasing, well, who was the plumber, who did the ceiling, the wet seal, who did the electrical, etc. If I go back to one person, that's always nice. So when you're putting these teams together, think to yourself in the future, if something goes wrong, do I know who I'm going to go back to? And have that process as part of picking your team. I always like to get things in writing as much as possible. So this isn't something that's, you can do to the nth degree, but as, where possible, if you can get things in writing in that quote of what's expected, a classic one. Who's responsible for removing rubbish and debris and the old stuff that comes out? Sometimes that's not in writing, and that can be an assumption. Well, if you're engaging just one trade amongst a whole project, they might just leave it out in the front yard for you, and you turn up at the end of the day and they're gone, but the rubbish is left. So those little things along the way, if you can read in detail the different quotes you get, because you'll be surprised some people include a lot of that detail, and then when you're asking other people to quote, you want to make sure it's apples for apples. So make sure you're on the same page about what is being quoted for. Then also in this quoting stage, as part of picking your players, you may actually need to re-quote at the end of the discussion point. So by that I mean, I'll give you the example of the bathroom I was doing. I received 2 quotes at the start of the process. So I said, hey, they both came and had a look. They looked at the size and got the measurements, and I said, I'm just looking to replace the vanity, the bath and the shower, gut it out and put back what's in there basically. But I just wanted to reconfigure things a little bit. But there was a bit of a wire cross there, and so when we wanted to reconfigure, it meant that we needed to dig out the slab and reposition some of the drainage points. So once the original quoter, who was a bit cheaper, factored that into their price, they came out a lot more expensive than the original one that was a bit expensive, but was able to add this on for relatively next to nothing. So I said, hang on, now that we know what we're doing, you've got to start with a quote and then kind of talk to those people and get their ideas and see what's going to work. But once things change a little bit along the track, so by the end of that week, I got them both to re-quote. I could tell them exactly what I wanted to do now, because I'd discussed with both of them and got the best of ideas from both worlds. And they said, okay, this is the final product, the final bathroom I want you to quote on. And like I said, it turned out that the original one that was more expensive was actually cheaper by the time we factored everything in. So make sure if things change along the way throughout that week or over a couple of days of getting that quote, go back to the drawing board, get a fresh quote so that you can compare those apples with apples. But that's it for lesson number 3, picking your players. Make sure it's a really integral and important part of the renovation process, and it's one of the lessons I learned, that it's really important to pick the right players. So stay tuned, we've got lesson number 4 coming up shortly.